Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to Cafe 229. We're very happy to have our guest speaker today. She's Roshi Pat Enkyo O'Hara. She is the Abbot of Village Zendo. And Village Zendo is a very nice place to be. If you just look at Roshi's background, you will know that's where we should all go to meditate. Roshi is a very special Zen teacher. She's part of the Gen X Dharma teachers from the Lion's Roar. She received her priest ordination from Maezumi Roshi, and she also received her Dharma transmission at Inka from Bernie Glassman, another very well-known Zen teacher. And the key special thing about her lineage is that they practice both the Soto training as well as the Rinzai koan study. So I think that's a special. They got the best from the both school, I believe. And her teacher, Roshi Glassman, is also very into social engagement and peacekeeping, which is very, the theme is very relevant to our Cafe 229. So Roshi right now, she's a founding teacher of the Zen Peacemaker family. And Roshi's focus is on the expression of Zen through caring, service, and creative response. Again, we really love this topic. And at her Village Zendo, she teaches 5 things and how 5 things that how Zen can express itself: meditation, study, communication, action, and caring. So we're really very happy to have Roshi Pat here. So let's welcome Roshi Pat Enkyo O'Hara.
Thank you, Peter. What a lovely introduction. I want to thank you for inviting me to come and speak to your Tzu-Chi Foundation. We're in really stressful times these days. And I think your foundation is one that offers the heart of compassion. As you said, I'm an American Zen teacher, and I practice downtown in New York at the Village Zendo. Of course, these days we don't practice together. We are, like so many centers, working completely online. You know, the heart of our practice is meditation. And it's funny because we are about action. We work in prisons, we work on the streets, we do various activities, particularly in the criminal justice area and in the racial area. At the same time, you could say the heart of our practice is our meditation, because it sustains us and encourages us to practice, to live a life of service and compassion, and to be active in this world at this time. So I could say that our meditation practice takes care of us so we can take care of others. And more than ever these days, we all need to calm ourselves and restore ourselves so that we can be energized to face the stresses of this pandemic, the unsettling changes in our lives, and the suffering that's all around us. So, you know, like so many spiritual practices, meditation can be seen as a ritual, just a ritual thing that you do every day to remind yourself that this precious moment is only existing right now. This precious moment, you are connected to everything in the world. And your role in the world is activated by this moment. So I encourage you all to try a meditation practice that works for you. There are many kinds, and I'm not saying there's only one kind, but there are many kinds. But find one that works and include it every day of your life. So each day return to your own sense of self, your own being, and renew with freshness your vow to live a life of service and compassion. Now, in our Zen tradition, we just sit quietly in a relaxed and attentive way. We use our mind to just follow our breath as we breathe in and breathe out. So it doesn't have to be really complicated, which you may have heard from others. I mean, it can be a really simple practice. So simple that I'd like us to try it now for just a couple of minutes, right now. If you just stop, close your eyes, and take a breath in. And allow yourself to just calmly breathe out. Just breathing in and breathing out. Perhaps you felt the calm that arises. Or maybe you felt, am I doing it right? Or am I doing it wrong? All of those things are fine and possible. Simply stopping what you're ordinarily doing and breathe in and breathe out and see what that teaches you. It can be very profound. So right now you might not recognize a big change, but if you do it every day for, say, 30 minutes, it changes your life. You become more present to what's really important to you. It's as if you become more present to your wiser being inside of you. And in these difficult times, during this time of COVID, this time of creaky economies of the world and the politics of fear and violence that are around us, we desperately need to find a way to evoke and act on our inherent capability to serve compassion and wisdom. You know, the Tzu-Chi Foundation that's sponsoring this talk is a wonderful living embodiment of the values of service and compassion. I love the acronym C.A.F.E, Compassion, Action, Freedom, and Enlightenment. Those are values that all of us can take to heart and make the center of our lives. In my Zen tradition, we place the highest value on a life that is lived with caring service and compassionate action towards others. That's what's important. And that value arises out of our understanding that we're all part and interconnected. We're all part of this grand reality. And that recognition of our interconnectedness gives us an energy and gives us a desire to take care of all beings. So we wear a mask. We maintain social distance while offering others what's needed. And when we listen to today's news, when we awaken our electronic devices, we can be inundated with stories of unrelenting suffering, beings, and the suffering of the planet itself. We have to ask ourselves, What is our place in all of this? What is our responsibility as beings, as part of the whole, of what's here and now? Can we just ignore the suffering? Is it even possible to hide from the suffering? You know, I find the old symbols and archetypes of Buddhist images and stories really helpful when I'm faced with these kinds of impossible questions. What can we do now in this world with so many suffering beings? So I go to the archetype, the image of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is a heroic figure in Buddhism. A bodhisattva takes care of other beings. It takes care of the earth itself and all that is. And each of us can turn ourselves into a bodhisattva. Bodhi means light. Being able to see clearly, being able to discern, and to function as light, to uncover the suffering around. And sattva simply means a being, someone that is, like you and me. A being who is present, a being who offers light. I translate that as a person who serves. How can we as bodhisattvas then serve in this suffering world? So I'm going to offer you some teachings that help me, that support me in this task. Some of the ancient teachings are really quite wonderful. They're poetic and they're symbolic. To the question, what can I individually do? Because we can't allow ourselves to get discouraged by focusing on a specific outcome for our actions. We need to keep our vision wide, open to new ways of working, never thinking that our work will be done and then we can just move on. There's an old story I like about Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. Her name, originally in the Sanskrit, means the one who looks down, as in looking down on the suffering of the world. When her name was translated into Chinese, Guanyin, it became the one who listens to the cries of the world. She's represented visually in many different ways. As a figure, as a female figure, sometimes sitting on a lotus, sometimes as a mother, the child, and sometimes with many arms and hands, all holding various tools. And I'm sure you've seen that image of Avalokiteshvara. Sometimes he or she has 11 or 9 heads, one atop the other. And male images of Avalokiteshvaras often show him looking down, holding tools to be of service to those who are suffering. Also, many heads and arms. And we might wonder, how did that image come to us? What teaching does that portrayal imply? What can it give us these days as 21st century bodhisattvas? It's said that Avalokiteshvara saw all the suffering that was caused by the demons of hatred and greed and ignorance, and how those demons were torturing sentient beings. So Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara entered into battle with the demons of greed, anger, and ignorance, and stopped all the violence that she witnessed. And she turned to Amitabha, the universal Buddha, whose name means immeasurable light, and said, "Look, I've saved them all." Imagine that satisfaction. It's as if you walked into a COVID ward and suddenly everyone was well. You turn to the doctor and say, "Look, I've saved them all." But then Amitabha said, "Oh, wait, look behind you." And when she looked, she saw a whole new wave of suffering arising in the world. More demons of anger, greed, and ignorance. More suffering. And she was so upset. She screamed, and her head broke into hundreds of pieces. And it said that Amitabha scrambled around to pick up the pieces to put her back together, but he became confused and put her together with 9 and sometimes 11 different heads, one on top of the other. And so now we have in the Buddhist tradition many images, many sculptures and paintings of Avalokitesvara with many heads and many arms. You go to a museum at the Met, there's some wonderful exhibits of art, or in an art book, you'll find examples of Avalokitesvara with many arms and many hands. What happened? What's the teaching there? What happens after we learn that there's no end to the suffering? There's no end to the demons. And yet, Avalokitesvara continues to serve, using all those heads and using all those arms to stop the suffering at this moment. She continues to serve thousands of years, not discouraged. And if we can take that teaching in and realize that we're not permanently going to fix anything, we're not going to fix ourselves permanently, nor our loved ones, nor the virus, nor racism, nor the climate, nor even the political system, nor the world's suffering. We realize that it's not a permanent fix, then we don't become discouraged when something that we try doesn't work. We don't become depressed. We don't become apathetic. Instead, we're free to act. We're free to serve within this vast network of life. We're empowered to make a difference. And we do that with others that are also struggling to make a difference. Our work doesn't depend on our view about how things should be. Instead, our work is to serve, is to care for what's right in front of us, to be of service by stepping in, paying attention, working with others to lessen suffering, to heal, to care. Our energy is then released. It doesn't depend on some immediate success. And it moves to a more compassionate understanding of those whom we think of as demons. Because they're probably just misguided, suffering souls. We have to be so careful not to harden our hearts against demonizing people who unwittingly create more suffering through their own loss of confidence in life, their understanding of the true nature of life, which is inextricably complex and an interweaving, an accident. Without losing our heads, without allowing old demons to attach to our sense of what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad, we can find excellent models to practice the Bodhisattva way. I make it sound so serious, but I was once asked a really terrific question. Why do bodhisattvas have more fun? Huh? What do you think? We all seem to take our service work so seriously, our citizen work, our compassionate action work so seriously. But really, consider for a moment, why would bodhisattvas have more fun? What is fun? Isn't it a delight in life? A delight in breath? In the unraveling quality of time? In the morning light? The sweet delicacy of the evening sky? Isn't it the look on the face of a child when you smile? The elbow bump on the street? The kindness you offer? The kindness you're offered? The way now we can detect a smile just by seeing another person's eyes? Isn't it handing a mask to someone who forgot theirs? Marching for the rights of others? We've been doing that now, and it's great fun. Offering our work, our money, our hearts for the good of others. Isn't it volunteering with others for a charity? Holding the hand of an old person? Isn't it joining with others to end unfair legal practices? Writing letters to parole boards? Speaking up at meetings? Accompanying immigrants to meetings? And on, small acts building to large ones. And it's fun. What do you think would get in the way of a bodhisattva having fun? Wouldn't it be the fixation on attaining a specific thing? In the old days, in the old scriptures, in the koans that we study, there's something that was called enlightenment that everyone was after and grasping. And it was that perfect grasping for enlightenment that was always getting in the way of people seeing the truth, of recognizing it as they themselves. So today you could say that we shouldn't let our idea of the way things should be, our ideas of peace, get in the way of our enlightened activity, our peacemaking, day by day, however humble it may seem. We can be willing to see the world with fresh eyes, to see new ways of working with the conflicts and issues that create suffering. We won't lose our heads. Instead, we'll find new and imaginative ways to approach this life and the suffering that we behold. Because our work is to serve in the process of change, not to cling to some fixed idea. Our daily 30 minutes of meditation helps us with this. And in those 30 minutes, we begin to realize that we are, in fact, time itself. It's not that we don't have time to meditate. We are time. We are that moment. We are in time and we are of time. In order to serve, we must recognize that aspect of our lives. And so we have more fun. Because we can appreciate the preciousness of our lives the spark of just this moment. I can help. I can be of use. And that being of use is really fun. Not agonizing how I can best serve, but picking up a tool at hand and digging in. So finally, I'd like to leave you with the very Buddhist old image of a bodhisattva who pilots a ferry boat across the sea of suffering, from one side to the next. This is from the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra in 8,000 lines. She courses in dharmas as empty, signless, and wishless. She does not experience the blessed rest, nor does she course in the sign. As a skillful ferrywoman goes from this shore to the other shore, but also does not stand at either end, nor does she stand in the great flood. Let me read it once, a different gender. He courses in dharmas as empty, signless, and wishless, but he does not experience the blessed rest, nor does he course in a sign. As a skillful ferryman goes from this shore to the other shore, but also does not stand at either end, nor does he stand in the great flood. I like this so much because for me it evokes the wisdom and compassion of our practice, but also what it's like to live a life of caring and service. The ability to meet the inevitable changes that arise in life. They course in dharmas as empty, signless, and wishless. This bodhisattva is here now. It is what is up for us now. It's not a fixed thing. It's empty of any fixed quality. It is transient, and it's made up of many elements. Very much a blend of our ideas, our past, the experiences of this mind moment, empty of any fixed condition. Thus, it's signless, because it cannot be fixed by a word or phrase, and it is wishless because there's no way to know what to do other than taking action. So what does this bodhisattva do? Like the pilot of a ferry, he navigates the ferry boat filled with suffering beings from shore to shore, not stopping either on the shore or in the river, but moving with the flowing rivers of time. And for us, it's constantly being present as life itself manifests, as time flows on. Even when we feel most vulnerable, we can also feel courage as we stay on top of the moment, not lost in our idea of what we should do, what we could do, but on top of the very moment, on the boat, in the rushing waters. You could say we're all these days in a ferry boat together and making our way across the sea of life with its suffering, its temptations, and its struggles. And we can break out of our solemnity and have fun. In this life, as we serve and care for those in need, we can do this. We can all do this because we are bodhisattvas. I encourage you to take up the strength and energy of a bodhisattva and help to take care of this world. Let me leave you with a gatha, a 21st century gatha. Get in the boat, the water's rising, all together now. Row, row across the sea of suffering. We can do it.
Thank you so much, Roshi. That's a very inspiring talk. I think we all can adapt this fun and play attitude to serve others. I think that's a very encouraging thing. So right now we're gonna start our Q&A section, and then I will read you questions, and then everyone can ask you more questions about how to find our creative ways to serve others. Great. So let our Q&A session start. And I'm reading the live chat right now, and we have many great questions. Well, I mean, comments actually that people have. So one question from Barry, Dale Barry, is I will pick up meditation practice and drop it just quickly. What's your advice for maintaining momentum, building consistency? So I guess this is a common question. People would meditate, and for my students, I let them try the first time, and 3 minutes feel like 3 years long. So like, how do we maintain that? How do we practice it? So that's a good question.
Yes, it's an excellent question. You know, these days when things are so crazy in most cities where things are locked down, and all of our ritual practices, maybe taking the subway or going to school, all the things that are really rituals have been taken away, and we have to make decisions every moment. I think it's actually that aspect of what's happening is very good for us, because then we begin to see that there are parts of our lives that we're not utilizing. And the urge to meditate, the desire to know myself, which is, I mean, should be uppermost in our minds. How can I be with myself for half an hour a day? Certainly we face those things with our physical practices and going to gyms and so forth. And this aspect of knowing yourself and bringing that up into your mind, and understanding that meditation is not something that somebody else told you to do because you'd be good, but because you will know yourself. You will be present with your breath and your mind. I think that will help you to continue and consider it like a ritual. It's you brush your teeth, you also meditate for half an hour. You find a certain place in your apartment, or you go to a center, and you do that every single day. And once it becomes ingrained in your habit structure, then you're able to really benefit from that consistency. And you become to treasure that time when you can be quiet and simply with your breath.
Great. I think it's very important to sort of know yourself before you can really serve others. And if you can't even be with yourself comfortably, how would you expect others to be comfortable with you? I think that's a
very good point, Peter. Yes.
Yeah, and I love the way you talk about how people are not having fun because they're they take it too serious, and the reason why they take it too serious is almost like what we're hearing nowadays about spiritual capitalism. Like people are like doing things like check marks, like, oh, I did XYZ, now I'm a really good practitioner now.
Absolutely. It's a gift to yourself. And if you just do that without looking for something that somebody told you were going to get from it, but simply experience it.
Yes. Great. So here's another question. I guess it's also related to what we're talking about. It's like, what meaning do you find from service? And I think this is related to two very fundamental teaching in Buddhism, which is empty nature and altruism. So what's the meaning of those two, and how do we find meaning through service?
Peter, you put it so well. I mean, it's first of all to recognize who we are. Particularly in this hyper individualistic society and this country that is like more individualistic than many, people can begin to think that they exist separate from everyone else. But of course, that's not so. We're part of a whole that is a fundamental Buddhist teaching. I mean, unfortunately, it's been given by the historians the phrase emptiness. So people think emptiness means doesn't have anything. Actually, emptiness means fullness. It means complete interconnection, complete association. And that means that everyone, I'm responsible for everyone, everyone's responsible for me. So we are interconnected. And when we're in a position to serve, it's a joy because we're taking care of ourselves. And yet some people would call that an other, but it's not an other, it's another aspect of our being. So you're absolutely right. It's very tied to the Buddhist understanding of emptiness. And related to that is the Buddhist fundamental understanding of suffering. Suffering is always arising. It's a nature, it's part of the nature of life. And of course, when we see, when we're suffering, when my hand is smashed, then I want to hold it. And when it's someone else, I want to care for them. I want to offer them some help.
It's like we want to help. I guess when we're helping, we don't want to have the concept of I'm helping you, but it's almost like the left hand simply just helping the right hand without making a fuss about, hey, I'm doing a good job for my right hand.
Beautifully put, Peter. Absolutely. Because that's the ego back. That's right. That's the one. I'm separate. But this non-separation is from that perspective. That's where service is of great use.
Excellent. I know you are like a practitioner who does a lot of service in your community. And here comes a question on what do you found are the most effective ways or activity or service that serve that Manhattan, especially I guess your neighborhood Soho population? Like can you tell us or give us some stories of what kind of service have you been doing so we can learn from you as an example?
Well, I think that certainly it's true that one has to make some choices because in order to be effective, one has to put together an organization and learn some skills. So if you're going to work with children, for example, you're going to learn some skills. And in our particular case, we do a lot of work around criminal justice. So we have we have a group at prisons, at a jail. We have people that are working with prisoners all over the country, writing letters and connecting to them and seeing what they could do. So that's a particular kind of thing that has happened in this city for us, and it could be anything. We also have people that work in the immigration in the city because that's another issue in New York City. I would say at the New York City Buddhist Council, which is all the Buddhist groups in New York City, you're going to find different people working on different particular issues. Chaplains for disaster, chaplains in hospitals. So it depends on, what is in front of you? What can you do? And when we got a call 30 years ago to go to a prison, that became, oh, we can do that. We can organize something and be of use in that way. So it very much depends on where you are and what opportunities are there.
And you have to know yourself well to know what you can offer the best.
Yes, we have people that go into the prisons, and we also have people who write letters to prisoners all over. That's a very different, so that might be for someone who's not able to go into a prison, but is able to write a letter.
Right.
Or to give money, right?
That's right. Yeah, I have colleagues who are psychologists work in the prison system, and boy, she said those are not an easy crowd to be with. So you got to have a very good patience and practice.
Yes.
That is so it's, and I think what you do is very inspiring for us because I think Tzu Chi Foundation also have volunteers working the.
Well, the Tzu Chi Foundation is a well-known, wonderful organization.
Thank you.
does a lot of wonderful work.
Hopefully, we can always collaborate in the future. That would be a wonderful thing.
That would be great. That would be great.
So another question that we have here is that often when people think of meditation, they only have the image of a sitting meditation, like the sitting Buddha. And so, but we know meditation is not limited to sitting Buddha. We also want to be the walking Buddha, the serving Buddha. So what advice do you have for people who want to learn to practice meditation, do kind of action, do movements?
Well, half an hour a day of seated meditation, and that isn't necessarily sitting cross-legged. I mean, if a person is sitting in a chair, all we're talking about is an alert posture, so that you can, as we said before, be more in touch with yourself, so that when you get up from the meditation and you walk out the door, that you have your mask, that you are aware of your body in the space with other bodies who are on the street, that you have this kind of awareness of the other that is you, but they are outside. And that begins to, and it's something that is such a joy and such a gift to be able to witness people who began a meditation practice. And at first it's a little ragged, and then it suddenly begins to smooth out. And it changes actually just the way they walk. Their presence in the world is different, and it comes from those moments of quiet and where there's an openness. And we're not kind of like driven by our ego, kind of our narrowness, but we enter into our wider self, our self that is connected to everything. And when we walk out the door, we're much more aware of everything that's going on. And that leads to service.
I would sort of like an old saying, just go with the flow.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Cause and conditioning, right? I mean, just go with the flow without conflict or opposition.
Exactly.
Well, I think it's I guess that takes time, it takes practice. And I think people are nowadays, the 21st century Buddhists or the people who are learning mindfulness sometimes have this sort of concept that if I practice a little bit, suddenly they work like aspirin or something. They're gonna take your suffering away, and you're gonna be the nicest person in the world. So I guess this is related to another question that people have here is what is your definition of Zen for people who are not familiar with Zen? Because you're a Zen practitioner, and I found this kind of situation a lot in my work because I teach college students about Zen, but I'm trying to teach them without using the word Zen. So how would you talk about it?
Well, it translates as mind. Zen means mind, and so it is a practice that focuses particularly on entering and being aware of one's own mind, and then, as we were talking about a few minutes ago, realizing that mind is not just what's in this head, but it encompasses all things. So, and then you could take a more academic look at it, and you would say, well, it's a tradition of Buddhism that arose in China in the 5th and 6th centuries, and had inputs from both the Vajrayana, the Tibetan tradition, and the traditions from the earliest sutras, and then the Taoist tradition, and it became a way of practicing, which we say, oh, it's so Zen. Well, we're talking about an aesthetic. When people say that, that's what they're really talking about. But in fact, it's a historical, spiritual tradition that was born in China and has come to us through Japan and Korea and Southeast Asia to this country.
Right.
Right.
But But I like the way you translate the word Zen is mind. It's very related to how we teach mindfulness. Like
Right.
mindfulness means use your mind wisely, I guess. So learn to use your mind, but not
Yes.
illusory mind. Learn to recognize your true mind, but not illusory mind. Maybe
Yeah.
that's a more academic way of saying that. Which I think another question is related to the mind part now, because I think not everything in the mind are happy-go-lucky stuff. There's a lot of wacky stuff in it, right? So one person asked, how do you combat the fear and unease of trying to know yourself? Because when you try to know yourself, there are a lot of challenges, and I mean, that's, as a psychologist, we see that all the time. People do not want to go there.
Right. Right. So, one thing that we do is the kind of gets back to what I was saying about ritual. We also have kind of a ritual way of being in our bodies at the time that we're meditating. So we're actually we sit with our eyes open. So it's powerful to sit with your eyes open. We say look at an object about 3 feet in front of you. And doing that, you're not completely in your imagination. You're actually in whatever space you're in your living room or at a zendo or in a park. You are awake and aware, and that's very grounding. That's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is the physicality of being aware of your breath. You're putting your mind on your breath, and you're breathing in and you're breathing out. So these kind of like blaming thoughts and angry thoughts and all the things that can happen are reduced considerably by the fact that your eyes are open and that you're placing your attention on your breath, on your breath. And so those are like ways to prevent what you're talking about, that kind of like nightmares of in the daytime. It's an awareness. Oh, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. And we say that, it's right on top of your head.
I think if we can learn to expose it, the exposing it itself already cut off the momentum.
Very good.
The more you recognize it, the more it lost its power on you.
That's very good. And that is definitely one of the instructions in Zen, is to recognize the thought and let it go. Mm-hmm. Recognize the thought and let it go. And sometimes in a half an hour, that's all you're doing. And then the next time you sit, maybe it's quiet.
So those are very good advice for our audience who never, I assume some of our audience never meditated before, so or they hardly have the meditation skills. So some of the questions are, I guess, from more their curiosity or curious nature. Related to back to knowing yourself and open our mind up and serve others. One question is talking about dealing with people who have different view than you. So the last question was dealing with your own personal negativities. But when we serve others, we will also run into people who are not kind or nice, or just doing whatever way to prevent you serving them. So how do we serve people who have different views than ours, or total opposite view as yours?
Yeah. So of course we would like everyone to think what we think and respond to us in a grateful and kind way. But many people are suffering so greatly. They may be having just what you were referring to a minute ago. They may be having deep psychological problems, or they may have had tremendously difficult life encounters. So in our service, we have to recognize that the expectation isn't that we're going to get something we're going to be approved of, or we're going to be appreciated. So the energy is not, we need to take the energy away from that and serve, because it's a good feeling to serve, and whether or not it's appreciated or not is really not for us to. And naturally, I'm saying we shouldn't be thinking about it, but of course we do. So how do we work with that? And that relates to compassion, having compassion for the suffering of others, and recognizing that the angry person is he or she is out of control, is suffering, and what we can do is have compassion for that person and find a way to either work with them or at least offer them in our own hearts some kind of release.
I think the prerequisite is really we should be aware of what's the hidden agenda of ourselves. Like when we serve, we tend to have some little hidden attachment or hidden agenda, so we have to catch it. So they will serve less as an obstacle.
Right.
Which the next question is related to what we're saying, because then people is asking, how do you deal with burnout or compassion fatigue? Because we hear that with people who serve others. There's like empathic fatigue, compassion fatigue, or burnout as a volunteer.
Yeah. So again, paying in these kind of your daily meditation practices to be really in touch with what your energy level is and what you're capable of, and when to meet that and not deny, oh, I'm feeling like I don't want to serve. So that means take some time and do some self-inquiry about what's going on there and to understand that. I mean, I'm talking about as a life practice, service is a marvelous thing. It gives back. And it comes out of our Buddhist understanding that we are interconnected. But certainly it doesn't mean that we go out and if we're feeling, I just can't do it today, that we need to look at what were my expectations about this? What did I feel that I needed to get that I didn't get? And to be able to understand that and to look at it wisely, not in denial, right? But to look at it wisely. That's all I say.
Great, thank you. I guess we can have one last question. And okay. I would sum up the key thing, though, is really that this interconnectedness, I guess Thich Nhat Hanh would call it interbeing, right? I mean,
right.
We have to understand how who makes us today came from many other helping hands. And then we learn to offer our helping hands. The last question is really about how to serve, how we practice our, let me just read it carefully. How we practice our mindful practice in daily life and learn to love, suffer. Let me rephrase what you said. I guess the idea is when we serve someone who suffers, it's hard to connect with the concept of being fun or having fun serving. So I think this is really goes back to the bigger picture, is the interconnectedness. Would you want to say some sort of concluding words?
Yes. Well, it's when we said that we were all interconnected, it's like if this hand is burning, I want to take care of it, right? And it's not something to think about ahead of time. It's like, oh, I can do this. Certainly we have to take care of ourselves because we've seen, the results of inappropriate kind of reaching in and trying to manipulate people in the voice of service. But we're talking about a spirit of one's life. Certainly there are going to be times when one steps back, but the spirit of one's life is that I'm here to serve this world. I am here to do this because I am part of this. And by being part of this, I can be generous, and that makes me joyful and alive.
So if we look deeper into ourselves, we notice the so-called Buddha nature, the nature of Buddha nature is actually serving
That's right.
without any extra agenda or
Right.
extra attachment. So
Exactly.
that, thank you so much, Roshi, for your wonderful lecture and wonderful time. And we're really happy to have you at Cafe 229. And I'm very happy to meet you. I'm
Well,
very happy.
thank you for having me. I enjoyed it so much, Peter. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you again. Take care.
Bye.
Goodbye. So our next speaker will be also very interesting for our audience. This is Dr. Deborah Middleton, and she is the co-editor of Journal of Performance and Mindfulness. And she will be talking about how to utilize contemplative practice to cultivate our mindfulness and apply that in action. So I urge all our audience to pay attention to our next speaker, that it will be the third Friday of September. That's September 18th and at 7 p.m. So thank you so much for being here today. Good night.